My parents cut me off financially but now expect me to gift my apartment to my brother because he's having a baby. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. I, 31M, never thought I'd be in this position. After years of hard work, I finally have a place I can call my own, a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice neighborhood that I've spent the last 8 months renovating. The problem? My parents now expect me to hand it over to my younger brother James, 27M, because he and his girlfriend are having a baby. Some background. When I was in college, my parents abruptly cut me off financially during my junior year. They claimed they needed to teach me financial responsibility and that it was time for me to stand on my own 2 feet. I was forced to take out substantial student loans, work multiple jobs, and nearly dropped out several times due to the sudden financial strain. I made it through, but those were some of the hardest years of my life. Meanwhile, my brother James has always been the favorite. He got full financial support through his entire college experience, including a semester abroad that I was told was too expensive when I wanted to do it. After graduation, my parents helped him with the down payment on a car and have continued to support him financially whenever he needs it. I don't resent my brother for this. It's not his fault our parents treated us differently. I've worked hard to build my career and finally reached a point where I could afford my own place. The apartment needed a lot of work, but I've put my heart and soul into renovating it, doing most of the work myself to save money and make it exactly what I wanted. Last week, James announced that his girlfriend Sarah is pregnant. My parents were overjoyed. It's their first grandchild. During a family dinner celebrating the news, my mother pulled me aside and said, "Your apartment would be perfect for them. It has that 2nd bedroom for the nursery and everything." I thought she was just making conversation until my father joined and said, "We've been thinking, you're single and doing well in your career. James and Sarah are going to need a stable home for the baby. The right thing to do would be to let them have your place." I was stunned. When I pointed out that I had just finished renovating, had put thousands of dollars into improvements, and that this was my home, my father said, "Family comes first. This is your niece or nephew we're talking about. You can just get another place." I tried to explain that I can't just get another place. The housing market is terrible, I've depleted my savings on the renovations, and most importantly, I don't want to give up my home. My mother then said, "We helped you so much when you were younger. It's time to pay it forward." I nearly lost it at that point. They barely helped me through college, and now they're rewriting history to guilt me into giving away my apartment? I maintained my composure and simply said I needed to think about it, then left early. Since then, I've been getting texts from both parents about how disappointed they are in my selfishness and how I should step up for family. James hasn't said anything directly to me about this, which makes me think my parents might be pushing this idea more than he is. Am I crazy for not wanting to give up my home? It feels like there's a massive double standard here. They cut me off to teach me financial responsibility, but now that I have something of value, I'm expected to just hand it over because my brother needs it? I understand wanting to help with the baby, and I'm more than willing to support in other ways, but giving up my home feels extreme. I'm conflicted because I do want to be supportive of my brother and his growing family, but this request seems unreasonable. How do I navigate this without causing a permanent rift in the family? Update 1. Sarah contacted me about nursery plans for their apartment. It's been 2 weeks since my original post, and things have escalated in ways I didn't think possible. First, thank you all for the supportive comments. Reading through them helped me realize I wasn't being unreasonable in wanting to keep my own home. Many of you suggested setting clear boundaries with my family, which I intended to do in a calm, measured way. However, before I could have that conversation with my parents or James, I received a text from Sarah, my brother's pregnant girlfriend, with a link to a Pinterest board titled Nursery Ideas for New Apartment. The message read, "Hey, just wanted to get your input on the nursery since it's your place too. We're thinking of painting next month before I get too big to help. Let me know what weekend works for you to help." I was completely blindsided. Apparently, my parents had told them I was considering giving them my apartment, which they translated to definitely giving them my apartment. I didn't immediately respond because I was honestly too shocked and didn't want to say something I'd regret. That evening, I got a call from James. I thought maybe he was going to acknowledge how inappropriate this all was, but instead he launched into a discussion about when I could move out. He suggested I could crash with Mom and Dad for a while, or find a studio somewhere since I don't need much space. When I finally got a word in, I calmly told him that there had been a misunderstanding and that I was not giving up my apartment. There was a long pause before he said, "But Mom and Dad said." And then his tone completely changed. He accused me of getting his hopes up, of being selfish, and said something that really hit me: "You've always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad helped me more. Now you're punishing my baby for it." I ended the call after that, feeling both angry and hurt. Less than an hour later, my mother called. She was crying, saying I was destroying the family and that the stress I was causing could hurt the baby. When I pointed out that they were the ones who created this situation by making promises on my behalf, she said, "We just assumed you'd do the right thing." The next day, I sent a group text to my parents, James and Sarah. "I want to be very clear, I am not giving up my apartment. I'm sorry if you were led to believe otherwise, but this is my home that I worked hard for and renovated myself. I am happy about the baby and will support you as an uncle, but not by surrendering my home. I hope we can move forward with clarity on this issue." The responses came in quickly. "Dad, we need to discuss this in person. This is not how family acts. Mom, I'm so disappointed. I didn't raise you to be this selfish. James, whatever, man. Just shows where your priorities are. Sarah, I was just trying to include you. No need to be so dramatic." Since then, I've been getting the silent treatment from everyone except my mother, who keeps sending me links to smaller apartments for rent and messages about how the stress is affecting her health. I've decided to take a step back from family interactions for a while. I've made my position clear, and engaging further will only lead to more guilt-tripping and manipulation. I've also changed my security code and asked my building manager not to let anyone into my apartment without my explicit permission, as I'm worried they might try to help me pack or start painting that nursery regardless of my wishes. I did speak with a lawyer friend who confirmed that, legally, there's nothing they can do to force me to give up my apartment. It's in my name only, I have all the documentation of ownership, and verbal family expectations mean nothing in court. I'm still processing how quickly this escalated and how entitled my family feels to my property. It's forcing me to reevaluate a lot of our relationship dynamics that I've normalized over the years. I'll update again if anything significant changes, but for now, I'm standing firm on keeping my home. Update 2. 2 months later, family intervention attempts and unexpected allies. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I've had some time to process everything that's happened. Things got worse before they got better, but there have been some unexpected developments. After my last update, my parents escalated their efforts to convince me to give up my apartment. They organized what can only be described as a family intervention at their house. I was invited to Sunday dinner, only to arrive and find not just my parents, James and Sarah, but also 2 sets of aunts and uncles, my grandmother, and even our family pastor. The ambush began as soon as I sat down. My father started by saying they were all there because they were concerned about the choices I was making. One by one, family members took turns explaining why I should give my apartment to James and Sarah. My grandmother talked about family legacy and how, in her day, siblings made sacrifices for each other. My uncle suggested that my attachment to material possessions was concerning. The pastor even chimed in about the importance of generosity and putting family first. I remained calm but firm. I explained that while I understand the importance of family support, giving up my home was not a reasonable expectation. I pointed out that there were many ways I could support James and Sarah without surrendering my apartment. I could help them find a place, contribute to baby supplies, or even help with childcare once the baby arrives. The conversation took an unexpected turn when my Aunt Lisa spoke up. She asked my parents why they weren't offering their house to James and Sarah if suitable housing for the baby was so important. My mother stumbled through an explanation about how it's different, and we're not in a position to do that, which only highlighted the hypocrisy of what they were asking of me. Aunt Lisa then revealed something I hadn't known. When my parents cut me off financially during college, she had disagreed strongly with their decision. She had apparently offered to help me at the time, but my parents had told her not to interfere with their parenting strategy. Learning this was both validating and painful. I could have avoided so much hardship if I'd known I had other family willing to help. After Aunt Lisa spoke up, the unified front began to crumble. 2 of my cousins admitted they thought the whole thing was pretty messed up, and my other aunt suggested that perhaps James and Sarah could look for apartments in more affordable areas rather than expecting me to give up mine. The intervention ended awkwardly, with my parents clearly frustrated that it hadn't gone as planned. As I was leaving, my grandmother pulled me aside and slipped me a check, whispering that it was to help with whatever you need. When I looked at it later, it was for $5,000, enough to cover some of the renovation costs I'd incurred. There was a note that said, "I'm proud of you for standing your ground. Love, Grandma." In the weeks since, James and Sarah have found a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighboring town. It's not as updated as mine, but it's perfectly suitable for a small family. My parents helped them with the security deposit and first month's rent, which only highlights the double standard, but I've decided not to point this out. The family tension remains, particularly with my parents, but it's less intense now that James and Sarah have found a place. My mother still occasionally sends passive-aggressive texts about how some people make sacrifices for family, and the baby would have loved that spare room, but they're less frequent than before. I've been spending more time with Aunt Lisa and her family, who have been incredibly supportive. It turns out she had always seen the favoritism toward James but hadn't wanted to overstep by mentioning it to me. We've had some good conversations about family dynamics and setting healthy boundaries. The most surprising development came when Sarah reached out to me directly last week. She apologized for her role in the situation, explaining that my parents had led her to believe I had already agreed to the arrangement. She admitted she felt uncomfortable with the idea from the start but had gone along with it because everyone seemed so certain. We had a good conversation, and I've offered to help them paint the nursery in their new place next month. James is still keeping his distance, but Sarah says he'll come around eventually. My relationship with my parents remains strained. They've stopped actively pressuring me about the apartment but continue to make comments implying I've disappointed them. I'm working on accepting that their approval might not be something I can earn, especially if it requires sacrificing my own well-being. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding relationships with the family members who respect my boundaries and continuing to enjoy the home I worked so hard for. I'll update again if anything significant changes. Final update: 6 months later, standing my ground while navigating continued family pressure about putting the baby first. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. My nephew, Thomas, was born 3 months ago, a healthy, beautiful baby boy who has already changed our family dynamic in ways I never expected. When Sarah was 7 months pregnant, I helped James paint the nursery in their new apartment as I'd promised. It was the first time we'd really spent time together since the whole apartment drama began. Things were tense at first, but as we worked, we started talking. James finally admitted that he'd felt uncomfortable with our parents' expectation that I should give them my apartment, but he'd gone along with it because it's always been easier to agree with Mom and Dad. He confessed that he'd always been aware of the different treatment we received, especially during college, but didn't know how to address it without seeming ungrateful for what he was given. While it wasn't exactly an apology, it was an acknowledgement, which felt like a step in the right direction. When Thomas was born, I went to the hospital with a gift basket containing a handmade blanket, courtesy of Aunt Lisa, who taught me to knit, some essentials, and a savings bond to start a college fund for him. My parents were already there when I arrived, and my mother immediately made a comment about how Thomas would have had so much more space in your apartment. I chose to ignore it and focus on meeting my nephew. Holding Thomas for the first time was a powerful moment. Despite all the drama surrounding his arrival, none of it was his fault, and I immediately felt a connection to him. I promised myself that regardless of the ongoing tension with my parents, I would be a present and supportive uncle. In the months since, the family dynamics have settled into an uneasy new normal. My relationship with James and Sarah has improved significantly. They've invited me over regularly to spend time with Thomas, and James has even apologized for some of his behavior during the apartment situation. Sarah and I have developed a surprisingly close relationship. She often calls me for advice or just to chat when James is at work and she needs adult conversation. My parents, however, have continued their campaign in more subtle ways. Every family gathering includes some mention of how cramped James and Sarah's place is, or how the baby needs a yard to play in, always with meaningful glances in my direction. My mother has started suggesting that I could, at least, offer to let them stay at my place on weekends so the baby can have more space to crawl. The latest development came when my parents announced they were setting up a family trust for Thomas's future. At a family dinner last month, they explained that everyone should contribute what they can to ensure Thomas has every advantage in life. My father looked directly at me and said, "Some of us might consider contributing property, while others might contribute financially." I remained calm and said I'd already started a college fund for Thomas and would continue to support his future in appropriate ways. This led to another lecture about putting the baby first and making sacrifices for family. After the dinner, I had a private conversation with my father. I told him clearly that while I love Thomas and will always support him as his uncle, I would not be giving up my apartment or any other property I own. I explained that his continued pressure was damaging our relationship and that if he wanted to have a healthy relationship with me going forward, he needed to respect my boundaries. His response was disappointing but not surprising. He accused me of being selfish and said that when he was younger, people understood family obligations. We ended the conversation at an impasse, and we've had minimal contact since. My mother has taken a different approach. She started sending me listings for family-friendly properties in my area, suggesting that I could trade up to a place that could accommodate everyone when needed. When I don't respond to these messages, she follows up with long texts about how Thomas deserves to know his uncle cares about his comfort and future. Through all of this, I've maintained my boundaries while still being present for Thomas. I visit regularly, babysit occasionally to give James and Sarah a break, and have continued contributing to his college fund monthly. I've made it clear through my actions that I can be a supportive uncle without surrendering my property or financial security. Aunt Lisa has remained a strong ally. She recently told me that my standing firm has inspired her to address some long-standing boundary issues with my parents as well. She admitted she'd often gone along with their demands to keep the peace, but seeing me hold my ground helped her realize she could do the same. The most positive development has been my growing friendship with James. Last week, he confided that he and Sarah are actually happy in their apartment now that they've settled in. He admitted that our parents' insistence that they needed more space was mainly coming from our parents, not from them. Mom and Dad have always had strong opinions about how we should live, he said. I'm starting to see how much I've let that influence me. James also apologized for his initial reaction to my refusal to give up my apartment. He acknowledged that it was unfair and said he was feeling a lot of pressure from our parents at the time. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship, and it feels more authentic than it has in years. As for my apartment, I've continued to make it my own. I recently finished a small balcony garden project and have been enjoying morning coffee there. The spare bedroom that was intended to be Thomas's nursery has become a combination guest room and home office. James, Sarah, and Thomas have stayed over twice when they had plumbing issues in their building, and it worked out fine for everyone. I've learned a lot about myself through this experience. I've discovered I'm stronger than I realized and that setting boundaries, while difficult, is essential for my well-being. I've also learned that some relationships can heal and grow stronger after conflict, while others might never fully recover. My relationship with my parents remains strained, and I've come to accept that it might always be that way. I'm no longer seeking their approval or understanding. Instead, I'm focusing on the family relationships that are healthy and reciprocal. My bond with Thomas, my friendship with James and Sarah, and my connection with Aunt Lisa and her family. I still sometimes get pangs of guilt when my mother sends a particularly manipulative message or when my father makes a comment about family loyalty. But then I look around at the home I've built for myself through hard work and determination, and I know I made the right choice. Thomas will grow up knowing he has an uncle who loves him, supports him, and will always be there for him, just not by sacrificing my own well-being at the altar of family obligation. And hopefully, as he grows, he'll learn from me that it's possible to be loving and supportive while still maintaining healthy boundaries. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this journey. Your perspective helped me stay grounded when I was doubting myself. I'm in a much better place now, both literally and figuratively, and I'm looking forward to the future, in my own apartment.